On August 18, 1590, Governor John White waded through the turbulent waters off Roanoke Island, desperate to reunite with the family he had left behind. Instead, he found a completely empty settlement. There were no bodies, no blood, and absolutely no signs of a struggle. The houses hadn't been burned or destroyed. They had been carefully taken apart. Carved into a palisade post was a single word: Croatoan. Before departing in 1587, White established a protocol. If forced to flee in danger, the settlers would carve a Maltese cross into the wood. White searched the post and the surrounding trees, but the cross was nowhere to be found. The fort's systematic dismantling and the absence of a distress signal didn't suggest a massacre. The physical state of Roanoke indicated a planned departure. To understand why they left, we have to look at why they were sent. Queen Elizabeth I needed a permanent American foothold to challenge the massive wealth and expansion of the Spanish Empire. Unlike earlier military expeditions, this 1587 voyage was designed to plant roots. It carried 115 men, women, and children, including John White's own granddaughter, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas. The English built their fort uncomfortably close to the Cutoff tribe, and relations quickly deteriorated over resources. However, through an indigenous representative named Monteo, the colonists secured a vital, friendly alliance with the neighboring Croatoan people. Realizing the colony lacked supplies to survive winter, White sailed to England to get help, but he arrived right as a massive naval war broke out with the Spanish Armada. The conflict effectively froze all English shipping. For 3 years, no supply ships could leave port. The settlers were entirely cut off from the empire that sent them, left to navigate starvation and complex local politics on their own. This chart shows regional moisture levels during the Little Ice Age. Notice the line plummeting right around 1587. The colonists had inadvertently arrived during the most severe regional drought in 800 years. When the colony was found abandoned, early theories suggested the Spanish had raided the settlement, or, as a 1612 account claimed, that Chief Powhatan had carried out a systematic slaughter. In 1937, a new narrative emerged when a tourist discovered an inscribed rock inland. This first Dare stone purported to be a final message from White's daughter, Eleanor, documenting the brutal massacre of her family. Over 40 more stones were quickly reported to investigators, but scholars eventually noticed the language didn't match Elizabethan English. The stones were exposed as a hoax, chiseled by a local stonemason named Bill Eberhart to collect reward money. Sensational claims and active forgeries like the Dare stones captured the public's imagination for decades. But they also successfully obscured the actual physical evidence of what the colonists did to survive the drought. This is a map drawn by John White, known as La Virginia Pars. For centuries, historians studied its rendering of the coast, but recently, researchers noticed a tiny, faint patch of paper glued over a section inland. When placed over a light box, the patch was found to be concealing a hidden symbol for a four-pointed fort. It sits near the Chowan River, exactly 50 miles inland, matching a distance White recorded as a planned fallback destination. Archaeologists now call this location Site X. Digging at Site X and a nearby location called Site Y, researchers used ground-penetrating radar and uncovered specific 16th-century English ceramics known as borderware, proving an Elizabethan presence far from the original coastal fort. Simultaneously, 50 miles south on Hatteras Island, the historic home of the Croatoan people, archaeologists unearthed a distinct mix of Elizabethan and Algonquian materials. They found European firearms, metallurgy, and hunting tools dating to the late 1500s. These concurrent discoveries suggest the colonists didn't move as a single unit. To survive the extreme drought, they split into at least 2 factions, seeking shelter with different indigenous allies. This chart shows the logistical reality of 1587. A typical Croatoan village consisted of 10 to 12 longhouses. Dropping 115 starving English colonists into a single settlement would instantly double its population, collapsing the local food supply entirely. Splitting it up was a survival necessity. A century later, in 1709, explorer John Lawson visited Hatteras Island and recorded meeting indigenous people with gray eyes. They told him their ancestors could speak out of a book, a clear reference to English literacy. Even earlier, the first settlers at Jamestown frequently reported credible rumors from their native guides about inland tribes living in two-story houses and wearing European clothing. Between the Elizabethan pottery at Site X and the sightings recorded by early explorers, the evidence suggests a colony that survived by merging with the surrounding indigenous communities. So why do we still call them the Lost Colony? For the 18th and 19th century British Empire, the idea that their citizens would willingly abandon their civilization to live as Native Americans was culturally unacceptable. It was easier to frame them as a tragic mystery than as people who chose a different way of life. The reality is a pragmatic story of cross-cultural adaptation. Faced with starvation and extreme climate conditions, the English and the indigenous peoples shared knowledge and resources to keep each other alive. The Lost Colony wasn't lost at all. Abandoned by their empire, they survived by merging their bloodlines, their tools, and their futures with the very people they had initially crossed an ocean to colonize.